Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I am your host, Randi-lee. I am so excited to introduce to you our guest for today, Ben Winter. He is an author, a speaker, an actor, an improvist, an entrepreneur, traveler, father, like so much more. And he loves to explore physical places around the world, but also to explore the mind. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. Is blue your favorite color, or that's just
It is actually.
awesome. Well, then I wore the right lipstick. I didn't even know.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks. Made my day.
Excellent. Because I was debating blue or purple. Which one should I? So there you go. All right. So I am super excited to get started because that whole exploring the mind thing just sounds so interesting. So first off, tell me, what have you written?
So I've written several books. The first one is called Living Unscripted, which is really just about using the tools and techniques of improv for everyday life. And that one sort of came about as a result of many different aspects of my life, which include doing a lot of personal growth work, doing improv, owning a business. And it all just sort of came together as, improv is life. There's really nothing else to it. The problem is most people don't know that when they're watching an improv show, there are rules that the actors are following. And unless the actors are following those rules, the show is going to be a disaster. So if you've ever enjoyed improv, it's because of a simple set of rules, and life follows those rules. And
That's
so
awesome.
we don't grow up with our parents telling us what these rules are. We just kind of go through life. So
Yes.
yeah.
Awesome.
So that's the first one that I wrote, and there's several variations of that one. So
okay. Would you mind sharing one of the rules?
Yeah. So most people, when you talk about improv, a lot of people know that one of the biggest rules is called yes and, which yeah, most people either they've heard it somewhere or they know it from something. And the rule yes and really applies to kind of accepting what is in the moment and adding to that moment. So if you think about it, anytime anybody is stuck or they go to a psychiatrist or psychologist, or they're trying to get help for something, first they have to accept that there's a problem. So as soon as you accept that there's a problem, then you can do something about it. So on stage, if two people walk in and so one says, "Hi, mom," the other person has to say, "Yes, I'm mom." And they have to add to the scene. Because if they come in and say, "I'm not your mother, I'm your sister," right now, the scene's not believable. Nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's freaking out. The audience is like, huh?
Yeah.
But if they embrace being mother, then they can add to the scene and make it go wherever they want. They can say, "Don't hi mother me, you spilled paint in the garage." Now we have a scene. Now we can build something. And
I love that.
Exactly. So in life, it's no different. If somebody says something to you that you're not happy with, or they're, the political system's crazy and you're like really upset about it. Well, the reality is it's crazy, or the person said something to upset you. And now what? You have to accept this is where we are, and what can we do about it? And so that's where that rule is.
I love that. That's so applicable to life. A lot of people, they just don't want to accept what's going on right now. Right? My mom is one of the worst for that. She's always, well, if somebody just did, or this just happened. And I'm like, okay, but nobody is, and that didn't. We are just here right now. Can we accept right now? So what else have you written?
So like I said, there's variations of that book. One is specific to relationships, one's specific for business. And the most recent one that I've written is called What to Expect When Having Expectations.
Love it.
So it kind of feeds into the rules of improv. And one of the things when I've been teaching improv or teaching team building, I keep coming across this one point, which is that nobody gets upset unless an expectation hasn't been met. And I was like, okay, that's
Yes.
really a cool saying. And I
Mhm.
can't, and I explored it for a really long time. I'm like, well, I can't find a flaw to that.
Yeah.
I would come up with every scenario I could think of why somebody would get upset. And on the other side of that equation is an expectation. And so I
Yeah.
was like, okay, well, it's cool, but what do I do with it? And it's like, so I used the analytical mind to come up with like a flow chart that
Okay.
kind of walks you through from being upset with an expectation and going through all the stuff. And then I was like, well, there's so much depth to this thing because
Mhm.
every time you say no to a question, there's like a whole couple pages of book to write. And
Wow.
so I wrote a book about expectations. So
I
that's
love
where
it.
that
How
all came
long did
about.
it take you to write that one?
It took me a little while just because,
Sounds like it.
well, it was weird because I had to like get it out. It's just like spitting
Yeah.
ideas onto pages. And then I was like, okay, how do I get it all to flow in the standpoint of a book? And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what took a little while. Is I had all the ideas out, everything was down. It was just stitching it together.
Nice. I love that. And I love that expectation part. I talk about that in my most recent book too, but not nearly as in depth as yours. Mine's just like a tiny little chapter. But I love that. Do you talk about where expectations, like what they could be rooted in, where they might come from at all?
Absolutely. So think back to when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Everything that everybody grows up saying, I don't want to be like my parents. And either you're exactly the opposite of your parents or you're exactly like your parents. Um,
Yes.
there's some middle ground.
Oh yeah.
I'm
Not
going to
carbon
generalize.
copies.
Exactly. But, we grow up, we have kids, and we're like, I just sounded like my mom just then.
I
And
know, I do that all the time.
right. And you're like, where did that come from? Well, that came from how we were parented. So that is our expectation of how to parent. Now, obviously, with technology being what it is, we come across things our parents never had to think of.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
like cell phones weren't around back when I was a kid. So
Yeah.
now I have to parent from the standpoint of, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm making it up as I go. But that's kind of where expectations really come from, is how we grow up and the society
Yes.
that we're in, the culture that we're in, what we see around us.
Hmm.
If you grow up in a bad neighborhood, you kind of expect to walk around with your guard up all the time.
Yeah. That's a good
If
point.
you grow up in the suburbs where you're always playing on the streets, you go everywhere not having your guard up. And
Yes.
or unless you go to that spot where your parents always warned you and then you're like,
Yes. Because you're
yeah,
being a rebel going to the elephant graveyard.
yeah. So that's a lot of where our expectations come from. So
I
it's
love that. Yeah, that's how I explain it in my book, just because of I'm explaining where my expectations come from and I talk about my parents. So I love that. That is
yeah.
fantastic. So let's go to when you were little then, because we're talking about expectations from the past. So let's go to the past. Talk. Can you share about where some of your expectations might have come from, and how you ended up being an author, speaker, actor, all this stuff?
Yeah, wow, that's a deep story there. All right.
I
So
know.
I'm gonna sum it up the best I can. From what I've been learning about myself and all the personal growth that I've done and writing and everything. Uh a lot of my expectations came from, I'm going to say, bad friend experiences.
Okay.
So my best friends in elementary school beat me up after school one day, and I had no idea why at the time. It was just like, I, that it just happened, and it was like the most dramatic thing ever. And I went home
Yeah.
crying and all that. And in middle school, another friend kind of tried to steal from me, and I kind of shut out friends at a certain point, and so it
Well,
was,
yeah.
yeah, it's like I can't trust people. It is
Yeah.
really, even my brother like was stealing money from me, and so it's like I can't trust people
Mm-hmm.
was kind of the big thing.
Yeah.
And it really came down to, I can't trust guys, I can't trust men. because I have no issue trusting women. I like women I can befriend all day long. Men, I'm just like, you stay over there. I'm not
Yeah.
sure about you. It
You have
takes
that
longer for.
bad history.
Yeah, exactly. And so uh, in growing up in high school and college, I really didn't have any self-esteem whatsoever. And so I didn't really try to follow my dreams or anything because, um, I wanted to grow up. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be an actor. I
Okay.
wanted to be a TIE fighter in Star Wars. Yeah, everything I wanted. Um, but I didn't go after my dreams. And it wasn't until about 10 years after my first corporate job that I was like, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I want to do, but I'm done.
Yeah.
And so I started a business, kind of through happenstance.
Yep.
And from there, well, slightly before starting the job, I did get into improv, which,
Okay.
and during those 10 years in the corporate world, I was doing personal growth and the improv. But
Mhm.
then I think that helped lead me to it being okay for me to quit everything. And then
Yeah.
after doing improv for a while, having a business for a while, and just everything coming together, it was like, well, I need to write about this because I want to start this other business
Hmm.
to teach improv, to get paid very well to teach improv. And so,
Yes. Yeah.
so I was like, well, people kind of like to hire people who are authors for some reason. So I'm going to become an
Yes.
author.
Well, that's
So
kind of why I did it too.
yeah, so it's a little bit selfish, obviously, but at the same time, the message is absolutely valid. Anybody can
Oh yeah.
benefit from it. So it's
Yes.
not like I just created a book for the sake of a book, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the quick journey of it.
Okay.
Let's just say
Wow.
the personal growth and the improv really helped take me out of my shell for sure.
Which is awesome. So let's start digging into some mental health here. We kind of touched on it because you must have been devastated having your friends do that kind of thing to you. That could not have been easy for your mental health. And you talked about how you had low self esteem going into college. So, can you tell us a little bit about just your mental health journey? I know that's a big
Mm,
broad question.
sure, and I think it definitely is an alignment. So I think sometimes when well, I'm going to speak for myself. When I
Yes.
was in it, when I was down, not feeling good about myself, I don't think I realized how bad it was until I got out of it.
Yes.
So looking back, it was pretty sad. Like I really didn't have a lot of self-esteem. Um, I didn't even have I can't even say I had a first date in college. There were opportunities in college that I just didn't even see because I was so naive about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after college started working that I got into the personal growth that it was kind of like, and the beauty of personal growth is it's just a bunch of mirrors that get held up. It's like, hey, look at this.
I love that analogy.
Hey, look at this. Because, if you ever go to personal growth and you're feeling attacked, well, I can almost guarantee nobody's attacking you except you.
Yes.
It's because somebody's holding up a mirror that you didn't want to look at. And you're like, oh God, don't show me that. Uh,
Yes.
and that's basically what's happening in personal growth. And a lot of it, a lot of personal growth I was angry with. And it took quite a while for me to really realize that no, I was just angry with myself.
Yeah.
And they were just holding up mirrors left and right. And I was seeing some good things. I
Hmm.
was seeing some results, which is why I kept doing it.
Yeah.
But it took several years for me to really kind of get, oh, mm, yep, I wasn't angry at that class. I was angry with myself. And
Yeah.
now that I know that, I can accept it and I can do something about it. So,
Yes. That is so important. So I love a bunch of things that you said there, the whole thing, but really I want to pinpoint a couple of things for everybody. Um, the fact that it's holding up mirrors to yourself is such an amazing analogy, right? And so I've taken a lot of yoga teacher training. So I teach yoga. And one of the things that they talk about a lot is your affirmations, saying affirmations and saying them in a mirror. right? So it's that same concept. You say it in a mirror because you need to see yourself, that personal growth of somebody basically holding up the mirror to you so that you can see, oh yeah, like you said, I wasn't mad at that class, I was mad at myself. It is so important to look inward. I love that.
Yeah.
So that was, yeah, that's
And
probably the best way anybody's ever explained it.
and the other piece that I think really helped me was getting into improv. You know, I had all the excuses of why I couldn't. You know, I wasn't
Yes.
smart enough, funny enough, at blah, blah, blah. I took a class, and the first thing they said, you know, there are rules to improv. You follow the rules, you'll be fine. I was
Mhm.
like, I can follow rules. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And the first time I got up on stage to do improv, like once we had a little bit of training and
Yeah.
I was on stage, I felt completely at home. I was not scared.
Yeah.
It was like this beautiful environment of it's okay to fail. It's okay
Yes.
to stumble. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect right now.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason in the real world, I had like, you have to be perfect. You have to do it right.
I was going to ask if you had some perfectionism qualities.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That comes from my mom.
Me too. Mine come from my mom too.
Yeah, probably from my dad too, but in a
Yeah, no, mine
different
didn't come
way.
from my dad.
Yeah.
No, that all my mom for me.
Yeah. So, but improv gave me permission to just be silly, to play, to fail, to not fail. Like it didn't matter what happened. It's just you're on stage, you're following the rules. If it
Yeah.
works, great. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't, people laugh at you either way, and that's just fun. So who
Yeah.
cares?
I love that. And I used to love improv. So I remember, well, this is grade 8, so it feels like a million years ago. But we did during drama class, we would do improv. And it was one of my favorite things to do. But I do realize that not everybody loves improv, right? But what I think is that if everybody can find something that makes them that happy, that it doesn't matter if I fail, I'm just going to do it because I like doing it. Everybody needs that in their life.
Yeah, I honestly think improv should be taught in school as a class that everybody should take, right along with finance and everything else. So
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I loved it. My grade 8 teacher was like the core drama guy at the school. So I got lucky that I didn't get put in the other grade 8 class where
yeah,
they didn't get to do that fun stuff.
I think it just like I think it might have been one of the best things for my self-esteem. And I think kids these days going into high school need as much
Yes.
boost as possible to
Yes.
have self-esteem. So if they can learn improv in 8th grade, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
all for it.
My youngest just started grade 9 this year. And what you just said just totally rung true. The self-esteem was very, very low. Not that he's gotten into improv. He's more of an artist, and not more of, he is an artist. But the self-esteem builds when you find things that you're good at. And improv is just something that, like you said, it teaches you to be silly. It teaches you it's okay to fail. I totally agree with you. Everybody at some point before high school, even nowadays, even before like grade 7, 8, because it's rough out there now as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I think technology expedites all of that. So for sure.
Yes, everyone's growing up much faster than they should be, I feel like. So let's
Yeah.
talk about your self-esteem because you brought that up a few times. So when did you notice that, well, and you said it before, you don't really notice till you look back, but now that you can look back, when would you say that your self-esteem kind of went in the dumps?
I'd say it probably was middle school,
Yeah.
you know, when the second friend sort of did their thing.
Yeah.
High school probably solidified it for me. You know,
I
things start.
try to block out high school.
Yeah, me too. Uh, you know, I kind of feel like, you know, high school is kind of that point in the curve where it just starts to take off.
Mhm.
So you think you're smart, you think you're smart, you think you're smart, and then you get like that one thing that says you're not, and you're like, oh, I'm not smart, I'm not good enough.
Yes. Yeah.
And it could have just been a crappy teacher. You know,
Mhm.
I don't want to bash teachers because they already get bashed enough, but every now and then there is a bad teacher.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say they're all bad, but yeah, you get that one or two that you're just like, or it's not that they are necessarily bad teachers, but they don't, because they have so many students, right? That they don't teach the way that you might learn. But they might be great for another kid, but they're just not so great for you.
Or they're just not in tune with the class to realize like I'm going too fast for the majority of the class. Or there were some bad teachers. My parents, they put the hammer down on some of those, but but yeah, there's some different teaching styles. And I think because there's so many different teachers in high school, because each subject is a different teacher.
Yes.
You might think you're really good at one subject, and then you get that one teacher that teaches it differently or is bad at their job.
Yep.
And then you decide, oh, I guess I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
Or friends, or lack of friends, or you're trying to hang out with people and then they don't want you. It's like, I think high school is a breeding ground for smashing self-esteem into the ground.
Yes. Yeah. Right now, with doing everything online, I know it doesn't work for all kids, but it has been a godsend in my house. My kid, like I said, just started grade 9, and so they finished semester 1 straight A's. Now, anybody who knew my kid previously would know. So my child has autism and depression and all that stuff, and before this, the teachers, they just didn't want to deal with the behavior. Right. So they'd give him work that was really, really too easy for him, or didn't make him try hard or whatever. And his grades and his report cards were just really bad. So he'd get like, say, 60s, 70s, but more importantly, those, at least in Canada, I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, we have a section where it's like independence, organization, like some soft skills. And it was always ends for him, always ends. But this, doing it online from home, so taking away that breeding ground, as you called it, for bad self-esteem, taking that part away for him anyways, his self-esteem skyrocketed. So straight A's, but more importantly, what I was so impressed with was goods across those soft skills. So it can be an N, which is the worst, a G in the middle, and then an S. S's across the whole thing. And I was like, wow. And for some kids, I know that they're doing much worse doing it online, but that's just it. You have to find what kind of works for you. And I love that analogy of the breeding ground of high school, because that's how it was for me. I hated it. I skipped a lot. I talk about it in my book. I'm not saying to skip. I'm just saying I did.
My son, I think, is kind of the opposite, where he needs that social interaction.
Yeah.
And
how old is he?
He is in 5th grade, so he's 11.
Okay.
But yeah, he just thrives in the social environment, so he needs to be in school. And because I think he just kind of gets bored and sad that he doesn't have his friends around. I kind of feel like I've done a really good job. His mother and I have done a really good job of raising him to be kind of strong and smart. And
good.
He's into sports, which I think really helps with like developing leadership skills. If you take it that direction, like if you don't make it all about competition, you make it about leadership. And he's just such a great kid, because he actually cares about other people. He's always checking in on other people. My hope is he's that guy in high school that will check in with his friends. Will check, like, if somebody's getting bullied, he's going to step in and stop it. Like, that's where I'm working with him, is like,
that is fantastic.
I don't want you to be the bully, but I want you to step up and put the bullies in their place. Don't be a bystander
either. Yeah.
Because I kind of feel like he'll be able to do that, because if he's into sports, he's going to be, he's going to be confident about it. So that's my hope and goal. And so that's where I'm leading for him.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that we just need to be open-minded, right? Different things work for different people, and we have to be understanding. And that kind of leads us sort of back to our mental health, because if we can be a little bit more understanding and understand that everybody thinks different, they learn different, they interact differently, then you don't need to bully them, right? You don't need to be like, why are you so different? Because we have an understanding that we are all different, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about when you figured out you were low, and I know you've sort of touched on how you kind of climbed out of it, this personal growth you keep saying, but can you give us a little more specifics on what some of that personal growth was?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, there's a company called Sci Seminars. Some people have heard of Landmark. It's another big one. They're very similar in nature from the people that I know that have done both. I've only done the one. But I started doing a lot of the classes there, and it was, I think, in like one of the higher level classes, something switched. And the reason I know that is because people kept telling me, like, Ben, you're walking upright. I didn't know who you were, because I would walk around
Wow.
with a slouch. And then one day
Yeah.
I was like, look at me, woohoo. I think that
Yeah.
was kind of the first point when I physically became more, uh, um, or when I physically had more self-esteem,
Yes. Yeah.
because when you're feeling good about yourself, you kind of stand upright.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
I
shows.
I'm chuckling because so me and my husband have been together for 14 years now. And somewhere in that first couple of years, we get up in the morning and he stands up and I go, "You're that much taller than me? Really?" Because he did the same thing. He always slouched down. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was, I think we had just graduated from college at the time. So maybe it was that, or whatever it was. But that same kind of instance of you've now stood up straight. And it's so true. So if you see somebody walk around, they're slouched over, it might, I mean, it could be a physical issue, but it
Could
might
be.
be something to do with their self esteem. Maybe give them a little, hey, you're doing awesome today. Look at you.
Yeah,
I like your shirt.
it's possible.
Yeah.
uh we wear, it's very obvious sometimes, if you pay attention enough, it's very obvious who's struggling and who's not, and what's happening, just because of the physical
Yeah.
that's happening with people. So
Yeah.
I think that was one of the first moments when I started to find the confidence, and I just sort of kept building it from there.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I think it was kind of the improv
Yeah.
was another big piece to that.
And how long have you been doing improv?
I've been doing it for 10 years.
Okay.
No, 12. I keep saying 10, but I've been saying 10 for like 2 years. So
It's like me in kickboxing. So now I just say, well,
yeah,
over 10.
over 10 years. It's
Yeah.
probably, I've lost track, but over 10
Exactly. So
years,
over 10.
over 10.
Yeah.
And then I won't lie, owning a business is personal growth all day, every day.
I know. Just starting this podcast, I have had to learn a YouTube channel. I've had to learn so many things. Like, all right, everybody. So before I started recording our interview here with Ben, I was trying to play with my ring light. All right. And I could not get the glare out of my glasses. And Ben was like, hey, if you just put it up more, then it will be helpful. I mean, it won't totally take it away. Like if I look up, right? And I go, awesome. So it's always growing. You're always learning something when you're doing anything really, but you're always learning something, especially when you're taking your own initiative. And by the way, thank
Exactly.
you for that tip.
Yeah. And it's what, every day you're the one that has to say, okay, it's time to do this. Like, you don't have a boss telling you when it's due. You like, unless you have a client, in which case, yeah, you
Yeah.
have some idea of a due date, but you're, I mean, you have to kick your own butt every day.
Yeah, it's the same with authors. And that's why I love talking to authors because some of them do have, the big publishers behind them that give them the due dates, but a lot of us are self-published. I didn't ask, are you self-published or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I thought so. So a lot of us are self-published. So we have to kick ourselves in the butt. We have to give our own deadlines. And even then they're not hard deadlines, really.
Yeah, well, I'm struggling with my next book, so it's like,
Okay. What's the concept of it, if you don't mind sharing?
so it's all about everybody being right. Not right as in right in politics, but everybody's
Yeah.
right about their views, their beliefs, their perceptions,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
can suck, because it's like, well, I'm right and you're wrong, but they're not, based on their perception. So
Yes, perception is everything.
yeah. And now and I've been struggling with it because it's like, okay, well, if everybody's right, well, like, what's the point of the book and how do we, get there? But, I think when it's something that's subjective,
Yeah.
there's no wrong answer, there's no right answer.
Yes.
But when there's cold, hard facts, choosing to be wrong on purpose, just because you don't want to be wrong, is kind of very detrimental. And so I kind of have been diving into how to distinguish between those things.
Yes.
And using the like rules of yes and to help get people there, because if you tell somebody that they're wrong, they're going to fight you.
Yeah.
If you agree with them and then say, well, and you ask questions and you provide more information, they might get to the conclusion on their own that they're wrong.
Yeah. And I love that book. And at the same time, I mean, people, like I said, they're always right in their opinion. But if you give them facts, opinions can change. They don't have to be set in stone. And I think that's a big problem with some people, is they're so scared to be wrong that they don't want to admit that they have now learned so they can change their opinion. It's not to say that, hey, you're wrong. It's, oh, I've learned this new fact, so now my opinion is changing about it.
Exactly. Yeah. And then unfortunately, we live in a world where, especially down here in the States, if you want to be right about something, there's so many news outlets and sources of information that will prove that you are right about your thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah.
Even if they're completely baseless and factless and everything else. And it's like, if you're talking about what's the favorite food, there's no wrong answer. Like, that's your favorite food. How can I provide any information that would make you wrong about what your favorite food is?
Now, if you haven't tried my favorite food and I give it to you, you now have another flavor to consider.
Exactly. And that's where an opinion can change. But if somebody says the world's flat, I'm like, I'm sorry, there's so much evidence that says it's not flat. Like, and that's where you kind of have to say, well, have you seen this science experiment? Have you seen this image? Have you learned about X? Provide all the facts that there are. And if they still want to be wrong, then you just walk away and say, it doesn't affect me that you think the world's flat.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. That sounds like a really needed book. Like, people need to read this, because
it's the funny thing, the people that need it don't want to read it.
Well, because it will prove that they're wrong, but not wrong, just not knowledgeable enough.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Or like you said, they're still going to just choose to be wrong. Can't do anything about that. So one last thing, because we have been chatting for a long time, and maybe we'll just have to have you on the show again at another point. When I sent you those pre-interview questions, I wanted to ask you about how in elementary school, you had mentioned you were treated like a shy kid instead of being scared. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it was funny when I read the question, it kind of like, oh, that's what happened as a kid. So my parents, whenever I was around them and we were in, a social situation, I was just kind of sitting there watching and observing. And so my parents would tell everyone, oh, he's just shy. Oh, he's just shy. Oh, he's just shy. And so I'm like, am I shy? I guess I'm shy. My parents said I'm shy, so I must be shy.
Is that expectation?
Yeah. So they kind of put it on me that I was shy. And I might have just been observant and watching the world and didn't want to interact with somebody that I didn't know. Like, and I don't know if that's shy or not. It's just, when the parents say this is what the child is, the child starts to believe it.
Yes. Yeah, that's very
and,
true.
What if, I don't know if introvert, extrovert is a learned trait. I don't know if it's, we come that way.
I'm not sure.
I know that I used to be very much introverted, and since owning a business and getting out and networking, I'm kind of more extroverted.
Yeah.
So I think it can change in time.
Yeah.
But I might have been extroverted. My parents said I was shy, and so I just became introverted as a result.
Could be. When you're told something constantly, you internalize it.
Exactly. And I think that's what happened when I was a kid.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I like that.
And I might have just been, and there were some situations where I was probably scared of them. But again,
Yes.
that probably was a learned trait for my mom, because a lot of what she says, or growing up, like she's working on this too, because she grew up the same way. It was like, be
Mm-hmm.
afraid of everything. Like
Yes.
the what ifs were always the what if the bad thing happens? What if the
Mm-hmm.
negative happens? Like, don't do that because the bad is going to happen.
Yes.
And, she was raised that way. I was raised that way. And so it's like, okay, so don't do that or be
Mm-hmm.
afraid of everything because the bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, you have so much knowledge and experience that people need to pick up your books, I think, because they really sound quite interesting. So on that note, what would you tell people who are listening right now? What would you tell them about mental health?
I'd say the first thing is just to be okay with it, be acceptant of where you are,
Mhm.
and you can do something about it.
That is awesome. Yes, great advice. So where can people follow you?
I'd say the fastest and easiest way is to go to havingexpectations.com,
Okay.
and you can find all kinds of stuff like social media links, the books, the flowchart. Flowchart's free if you want it. You can
Oh,
print it out,
awesome.
put it on your fridge, whatever you want to do. But yeah, that's probably the fastest and easiest way.
Okay. Say it one more time for everybody.
Havingexpectations.com.
Awesome. And where are your books available?
If you go to that website, you can find links. They'll all be on Amazon, so you can buy them all on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so, so much for being on the show. I am so glad that I got to ask you lots of questions. And hopefully I didn't stump you. It didn't sound like I stumped you, but well, I mean, you do improv, so
yeah.
yes. And what's your next question?
I'm gonna pretend I'm not stumped, just even if I am.
Yes, I thought that's hilarious. People will say, "Hey, I have a question for you," and I always go, "Well, I have an answer for you." I don't even know what their question is, but I'll give them some answer. Might not be the
Yeah,
one they're expecting, but I'll give them something.
I do the same thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. So I just want to say again, thank you so much to Ben for coming on the show. And for everybody who is listening or watching right now, be sure to hit that like and subscribe, follow button, thumbs up, right? Show your support for our awesome guests and for this show with the message of we need to be honest and open about our mental health. It is the only way to end the stigma.